When you look at how the Eagles have fared against these top running backs in the league so far this year, they've been very good. And Devonta Freeman, 22 yards. Kerryon Johnson, 36. Aaron Jones, 21. Le'Veon Bell, 43. And yesterday, Dalvin Cook, 41. So KC Joyner, they did their job in stopping the run. The air, though, different story. And I applaud the Vikings who want to run the ball but got away from it yesterday and said, nope, we're going to go after you. And they found their guy and Diggs, and they went after the Eagles secondary with regularity.
They did, and the Eagles played right into their hands, though, because they were overly aggressive the entire game. Or actually, take that back. They weren't aggressive early, but they started to be aggressive late. And when they got aggressive, the Vikings knew how to beat them.
And Diggs obviously had a big game yesterday. Thielen, not as big, but where do you – the lack of pass rush from Schwartz, I mean, he's trying everything he can. They blitzed a lot more this year than they have in the past. But is this a talent thing yesterday, or was that a scheme thing yesterday?
Scheme thing. They got way too aggressive. Early on, you saw Minnesota throwing a lot of smoke routes where you just take one step and throw it to the receiver, or a hitch route where you just run it 5 yards downfield. They were doing that early because the Eagles are sitting back and playing 7, 8, 9 yards of the ball. And I think and they were hitting a couple plays and things, but nothing major. And I think the Eagles just said, we can't sit back and play this kind of coverage. We've got to be more aggressive. And they kept trying to do things to be more aggressive, because you mentioned how they stopped the run. They do that by doing one gaps with defensive linemen, get upfield and all that. But they have to back that up with quality safety play, and they just got safeties and corners way out of position yesterday, and because they were trying to make all these big plays, and they should have been playing a lot more shell coverages, I thought.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are wondering, why not just kind of let you sit in the zone and then come up and tackle like they do a lot of times, where they kind of sit back there and they let you catch the ball in front of them, and then they come up and tackle you. But they had a rough time yesterday keeping guys in front. It did seem there were some communication breakdowns, though. Did you see that yesterday?
There were a couple of communication breakdowns. There was one where they it looked like the Eagles were in quarters coverage, and they had a player running across the field, and the safeties who were in the middle of the field. In quarters, you got the 4 players, 2 corners on the side and 2 safeties down the middle, and they're all split in the quarter of everything in quarter deep. And when they had somebody running underneath, both safeties bit up on the underneath route, and neither of them stayed deep, and that's how Diggs got behind him. And the second one, I didn't understand it at all. That was the big play they made after they stopped the fourth down play when they made the big play to Diggs. I couldn't understand in the least, because the Eagles only had one safety high, and here's Rasul Douglas playing what looks like cover 2, and he's it's like you're the only guy on this side of the field, and the safety's halfway across the field, 25 yards away. I mean, Douglas, you have to play that guy. I don't care what you think the coverage was. You're the only guy out there, and so I think that was more on him. But yeah, that's over aggressiveness in the Eagles' part.
Yeah, and obviously, the secondary has been a problem for them. What do you think? I mean, we talked about it Friday that the pass rush, I mean, this is a matchup that is there for the taking. The Vikings have a poor offensive line. They were missing a starter. Were you disappointed, if you're an Eagle fan, that they weren't able to get more pressure, or was there a scheme thing there that prevented the pressure?
I think that Eagles just needed to say, because it's one of those situations where a lot of defensive coordinators just say, we have to get coverage. I think sometimes the defensive coordinators have to feel like we've got to impact the game in some way. And in this game, I think when you have a quarterback who's been having issues this year, and receiving core, Diggs a couple weeks ago, people were saying he called in sick and he was, kind of almost quitting on the team, wanted to be traded. And yet you're going to go ahead and play this guy with a cornerback, a backup cornerback, and your safety's biting up on the run and all that. You're not just going to try and take that away and frustrate them. And I think the Eagles just, I think they get to the point where they say we have to get a pass rush no matter what. And this might have been a game where, okay, if you get the pass rush, fine. If not, let them throw underneath, because Cousins will take chances if you start to frustrate him.
We're talking with NFL Insider KC Joyner here, breaking down the tape of yesterday's Eagles loss. What was the identity of the Eagle offense?
I think they never where the defense got too aggressive and said, we're going to go ahead and just be at a lot of time. I think the Eagles, on offense, they didn't get overly aggressive, which I actually thought was a good idea, because this is not the sort of defense that you just want to go all out to try to beat deep. You're going to have to run sequential offense against them. So they were trying to run and trying to throw the short stuff, and they were trying to do those things. I still think they didn't go after Trey Waynes enough. They had the one post pattern to Aguilar in the third quarter, I believe it was, and Waynes had good coverage there, but they did beat him in coverage a couple of times. He's their coverage weakness. He's not a terrible cornerback, but he's not a great cornerback, and you need needed to go after him. Having said that, when you get Sanders going up against their linebackers, and linebackers couldn't cover Weirwatt to save their lives, I mean, that shows that they were attacking a weakness.
Yeah, and I know that there was a lot of drops again yesterday. What you think of Wentz overall? He was, it seems that without him making a couple of plays, the offense would have been worse.
Oh, can you imagine if they would have had? You could put if you put a average quarterback or even a B-rated quarterback out there. If you put that player out there in this situation, they put up 20, could have put up 23 if you try the field goal at the end of the half instead of trying that fake. And they had a couple of plays that might have been there. I mean, they could have put even more up against. This is one of the best defensive league, and there's a lot of that is Wentz because he was making plays where they were there to be made. And again, Sanders is getting open, but you're hitting them with the right kind of passes, and to be able to read those coverages because both times the linebackers were not in the position that it should have been. One time a linebacker got picked, and the other time he thought it was going to be a short route, but both times Wentz read it perfectly and hit it, so kudos to him.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess when you watch this team, how much do they miss a guy like Deshaun Jackson?
Just tear the top off the defense because if you put him in coverage, if you get him as a deep, the deep threat out in the field, and you say, okay, now you're going to be able to pick and say, well, we've got Jeffrey, we got Aguilar, or we got Jackson. One of them is going to get up against Waynes. Whereas in this situation, when you don't have him out there, then it's Aguilar. Really, Aguilar's just probably not good enough to beat Waynes in one-on-one coverage, and most of the time, and you might be able to scheme him open. And Jeffrey's more of a contested ball guy, so I think that would be a matchup that they could have won in a big-time way. And not having him there, you just don't have a tear the top off the defense kind of guy on the offense right now.
Let me ask you, do you think that getting back on the defense, Mills and Darby, is enough to suffice at that corner position? Or do they got to make a call and get outside of the organization? Or getting those two guys back, does that at least bring them back to some sort of respectability? I
keep going back to what Bill Belichick says about when it comes to play calling or actually anything. He says the less adaptable you are in any part of the game, the less adaptable you are, the better you better be at whatever it is that you do. If you're a power running team, you better be able to power, and that's all you do. You better be able to do it exceptionally well because teams will be able to stop it. And I keep seeing the Eagles on defense and going, guys, I get that you want to one gap and pin your ears back and get the pass rush and get upfield the stuff to run, and it works. But there are situations when you need to be doing something else and you need to stick with doing something else. Look at the Steelers, what they did yesterday, the Chargers. They just sat back in shell coverages all game long, and they shut that team down for almost the entire game because they did that. I'm not saying the Eagles could have shut the Vikings down, but they were playing in situations they were giving up too many big plays and too many easy plays, and this is a game where even one of those, as we talked on Friday, just one of those kinds of big plays could have made a difference, and they gave up, like, I'd say 2 or 3.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people talking about that decision to go with the fake field goal right before the half there. I got to second guess that. You're getting the ball back in the second half, even if they complete the pass. I mean, to me, you kick the 3, you get the ball back. You could have had a 10-point swing there.
Easily, and Anthony, the thing is, you go back and look at the tape, Anthony Harris is the Vikings starting free safety. They had him on the field. He's sitting back at the snap. I slowed it down and watched it in slow-mo. He's at the snap, watching it get snapped to the kicker. By the way, the holder didn't fake at all. He needs to fake like the ball got snapped over his head. He didn't do anything, but he watched it and read. I mean, he immediately, first step he's taken is reading for it, and he's a free safety used to seeing that sort of thing, and the Vikings took one of the defensive linemen and dropped him back in the short zone. Like, they fully expected a fake there.
All right, KC Joyner, let's take a look at what happened in Week 6. It was another crazy week. It's getting more difficult to figure out this league. I can tell you, it's right when you think you know some things. First, before we go to Week 6, let's look at tonight. Packers-Lions, 4-1 against 2-1-1. Green Bay lost both times last year. Rodgers not playing like an MVP-level Rodgers this year. I guess we'll find out if we should believe in the Lions tonight. How do you see tonight going?
I think the Lions will win schematically. They'll be doing a very intelligent job of going after the Packers' weak run defense. And the Packers don't have Devontae Adams, so their passing game isn't going to be quite as powerful as it usually is. I think this is a game Detroit can pull the upset. Still picking the Packers, but I think this game plays a lot into what the Lions can do.
Yeah, 3.5 Green Bay favorite tonight. 46.5 is the over-under. We'll have the game right after the Countdown to Kickoff show with Tony Bruno on 97.3 ESPN. All right, let's go back and see what happened. The early game in London, 4 interceptions for Winston, just when you think he's kind of getting it right, and you're like, maybe Arians just get to him. No, he had 400 yards, but the interceptions just continue to be a problem, and Allen is undefeated for this Panthers team. They're going to have an interesting decision there. So Carolina gets to 4-2. Who knew?
Yeah, Carolina gets 4-2, and I think they need to. If Allen's winning, they need to keep going with him. They've said earlier Cam needs to get healthy, and there's talk that he needs a lot of time to recover or get back to full strength. And if I'm them, I don't want him at 80%. I want him at 100%. And for the Bucs, multiple offensive coordinators and head coaches have tried to fix Jameis Winston's propensity for throwing passes into coverage, and nobody's done it. I think if you've got him as your quarterback, you just have to hope the big plays outweigh the bad ones, and that didn't happen yesterday.
Panthers 4-2, Bucs 2-4. Seattle on the road, they win again, 5-1. Browns had this game, they just couldn't hold on, and the Browns fall to a disappointing 2-4. Russell Wilson, excellent again. Chris Carson had a big day.
Carson had a big day. Wilson looked great. And Baker Mayfield said after the game that he plays well when he's mad. And then people ask him, "Were you mad before this game?" And he's like, "What are you guys? Are you my therapist and things?" Or he's kind of making a joke about it. But it's like, yeah, you might do well playing mad, but you're not. You aren't making good decisions as a quarterback. I think he's second league in interceptions, and your team is not making good in-game decisions. Eventually, this is going to get in their psyche, and they're going to be the same old Browns.
Browns fall to 2-4. Very disappointing season for the Browns as they lose at home 0-3 in front of the home fans. Texans go on the road to beat the Chiefs. Now both Kansas City and Houston are 4-2. We thought the AFC was a Chiefs-Patriots destiny to happen in the AFC Championship game. The Texans might have something to say. Watson, a great day yesterday. Hyde, a big day as well.
You can get in the shootout games or 50-50 propositions, and if you're Houston, that might be the case getting on the road at Kansas City and having to play that type of contest. That's the thing, though. Kansas City last week go up against the Colts, and look where they play a slugfest game and lose that one at home, and then they get in a shootout game the next week and they lose that. And it looks like Mahomes is having a little bit of problem with that ankle, and that could be an issue. They've got some O-line issues and things. I mean, I still think they don't know exactly what they want to be as a team. They don't want to be exactly what they were last year because they came up short, and they need to figure that out, because if they don't, they're going to keep having problems.
Both teams 4-2 in the AFC. A couple of winless teams. Washington beats Miami 17-16 in that game. Rosen got benched in the fourth quarter, but Adrian Peterson, a little turn back the clock, 23 carries for 118 yards. I didn't see much of this game, but were both teams playing to lose is what I want to know.
It doesn't look like the Dolphins are playing to lose late, benching Rosen like that. And I think if you're the Dolphins, hey, if you really want to show that you're going to try and win, go ahead and keep putting Fitzpatrick out there and hope you get Fitzmagic, because Rosen has shown I'm just a dink-and-dunk quarterback, and I'm not going to take those chances. And I'd rather, if you're going to lose going 0-16, at least have somebody who's going back there trying to go gunslinger and try and hit big plays. So give kudos to the Dolphins for making the change.
Redskins' first win of the year. They go to 1-5. Saints, ugly game, 13-6. They beat the Jags, but the Saints improved to 5-1. And Teddy Bridgewater, perfect since he's taken over for Breeze. They're going to get Breeze back soon. The defense, really the story there. Minshew did not play well yesterday, but the Saints' defense might be the standout of yesterday's game. And that Saints team, them in Seattle, might be the best. I guess the 49ers have something to say about that in the NFC.
They do. It's a deep roster in the NFC. And the thing about the Saints is we've seen them win shootout games. We've seen them win slugfest games. We've seen their offense throw for a lot of touchdowns. We've seen they can play this type of clockball game. They can scheme themselves into whatever type of a game they need to get into. We're just talking a few minutes ago about being able to do that. They're one of the few teams that has the ability to play whatever type of game they need to play, and it makes them probably the most dangerous team in the division or conference.
Minshew, 163 and a pick yesterday. Got sacked a couple times. Did not play one of his better games in his young career. Bengals go on the road. They almost pulled off the win. The Ravens go to 4-2, but something about the Ravens just doesn't seem right. Lamar Jackson, though, 152 yards rushing and a touchdown. His favorite receiver, Mark Andrews, 6 for 99. But the Ravens fought pretty tough with this Bengals team who fell to 0-6.
Ravens have more defensive problems than they're generally thought, because people used to think of the Ravens as a tough defense. Their defense is really bad in a lot of metrics. And to play this close to the Bengals offense that lost another offensive lineman yesterday, they're down to like their 9th and 10th string. I mean, they've got just really a ton of injuries up front. And it says something for the Ravens. I agree with you that they're hard to figure out, because I think they're becoming too much of a Lamar Jackson-centric team, and that type of quarterback can win you a lot of games. I'll look through NFL history. If you've got that type of quarterback and you're relying on him to win the games for you, you're going to have run into problems here and again. So they need to figure out all plan B, because that's going to work for a while, but it's not going to at some point.
All right, San Francisco on the road beats the Rams with 2 backup tackles, 20-7. Rams have now lost 3 in a row. 49ers are perfect this year. Garoppolo has a nice game. Kittle finally had a big game, 8 for 103 there. But I guess it's time for – I've been on the 49ers, so I've been taking them serious. But it's time for the listeners to start taking them serious.
I'm with you entirely. They stand out big time on tape. And I've been saying for years that all we run a passing, power football works. It's never not worked in the history of the NFL. It works today, and the 49ers are proof. Yeah, they get backup tackles, but they got tons of people who can block really well on that team. Their backups can block well, and their defense knows how to play very high percentage defense. Not what we saw the Eagles yesterday, but very high percentage defense. Right now, I think if San Francisco faced New England in, say, a Super Bowl, if it was held this week, if that's what it was, I think they'd stand a very good chance to win that game.
That defense is pretty darn good. Jared Goff yesterday hit 78 yards passing. Not so good.
Without one of their starting cornerbacks, too.
Yep, that 49ers defense is legit. All right, Falcons, I don't know what's happened with this team. 1-5. They lose to the Cardinals. Arizona's 2-3-1. I mean, they're kind of hanging around all of a sudden. Matt Ryan, you look at his day, 30 for 36, 356, 4 touchdowns. And Hooper, 117 yards and a touchdown. Freeman has a good day, and yet they lose. I got to imagine Dan Quinn's on the hot seat down there.
He has to be on the hot seat. He's a defensive coach, and hey, look, their offense is hit or miss. Sometimes their offense could go a half and do nothing and then play great in the second half. So you'd like some more consistency, but the defense is just consistently bad the whole time. And if you get a defensive coach, as I said before, if you've got a coach who can't figure out what the problems are and can't fix them, and that's what it looks like it is, you need to get a new coach. So I don't want to say they should fire the guy, but it doesn't look like he's got the solution. And he's a defensive guy, and they just can't get anything done on defense at all.
Yeah, rough day at the off. 34-33. They missed an extra point in that game as well. That contributed to the Falcons falling to 1-5, 0-4 on the road. Broncos shut out the Titans. Titans had to make a quarterback change in this game. Flacco, nothing special. Lindsey has a nice game. But the defense was the story. And this Titans team, I mean, they have some blowout wins. I mean, they beat up on the Browns. They beat up on the Falcons. But the 4 losses they have are head-scratching. They get shut out against this Denver team who's now won 2 straight.
I think it's time for Marcus Mariota to find a new place, because I think he could do better if he gave him a certain type of situation. If you gave him I don't want to say a better coaching situation, just a different one. I think it's time for him there. And their offensive coordinator, their whole offense has just been. I get they want to run power football, but you got to be able to do something else that's bland as can be. And the Denver, look, they lost a couple of last-minute games this season. They could have 1 or 2 more wins. So they're probably a lot better than the record says. The Tennessee, they're probably as bad as the record says they are.
Denver, gets to 2-4 with the win. Tennessee falls to 2-4 with the loss. What happened in New York where the Jets get their first win? Dallas, I get it. They had some injury issues, but the Jets have been abysmal. If you're a team that thinks they can win a Super Bowl, Dallas has talent. I got to imagine if this was a different situation, 10 years of Garrett, and to lose that game, you would think that something has to be changed out there, because to me, that's an unacceptable loss. That's a Mike Tomlin type loss, where you Tomlin, you played under the level of your competition, and it's just something I can tell you about Darnold. Last year, I believe it was the last 4 weeks of the season, Darnold was the league leader in total QBR. So he did phenomenal down the stretch last year. He's fantastic in college, one of the best prospects I've seen in the 13 years doing this. So he's that good. I don't think they still should have won that game, or Dallas should have lost that game. But that says Dallas just played down to the talent level of the competition, and it speaks bad to the coaching. Well, I would say, to me, Dallas is one of the most talented teams on both sides of the ball, but they have got to be one of the worst coached teams in the league. They are. Their special teams are terrible. They lose special teams games every single year. And they just don't do a lot of the things that they should do well. And by the way, Heath, they're one of their safeties in coverage. He's awful in coverage, and they leave him on islands way too often. And if you have bad special teams play, bad safety play, you're going to lose a lot of games you should win. One quick thing on the Jets and Darnold. Is Darnold to you one of those quarterbacks who's a difference maker? Meaning you have him on your team, and that turns your team around because like Mariota was the number 2 pick, but he's not turning the franchise around. I mean, he's good enough to be about 9-7, but is Darnold one of those special guys?
Yes, Darnold is one of the, in my estimation, he's one of those special. You've got to put players around him, though. You've got to treat that situation like Indianapolis did with Andrew Luck, where you give him an offensive line. In fact, that's the terrible thing is that Andrew Luck for a long time didn't have a good offensive line, but you give him skill position players, an offensive line. You build an offense around him because he is that sort of player that can make that sort of difference. Yeah, I think that if you give him a good enough offense and things, I think if you give him a really good offense and a solid defense, he's a 10-win quarterback every year.
All right, Sunday night last night, Mike Tomlin gets a win on the road, 24-17, as Delvin Hodges outplayed Phillip Rivers. Now, Rivers came back and had some big numbers at the end, 320, 2 touchdowns, but it looked like the Chargers didn't have a lot of interest in tackling last night.
They have a lot of interest in tackling. They can't block. Their offensive line is filled with backups, and they can't block. And again, the Steelers sat back. In fact, I think the best way to put it is what was said in the broadcast last night, that the Steelers, whenever they're in doubt as to what to do, let's just be more physical, more aggressive. And last night they were more physical, they were more aggressive. And again, they sat back in shell coverages all game long and said, look, we're going to play cockball if we get a lead, and we're going to stick in this sort of defense. And it says that they know how to win a sort of game with the Devlin Hodges. They got a bye week, and then they got Miami. They'll be 3-4. They probably should only be a game out of first with a half the season to go, so they're still in this.
2-4 Steelers. Chargers have, their season. This was a team that some thought could be a Super Bowl contender. Your opinion on Rivers? Does he look like he's running out of gas? It's
partly that he may run out of gas, but also that if you don't have an offensive line, they've never given him a great offensive line, and he has to have a better offensive line than this. You can't just go, look at the Steelers. The Steelers have one of the best offensive lines in the league, and they're able to survive that third-string quarterback. You put the Rivers behind that offensive line, and he wins that game 34-17 or something like that. So, it's a big difference. But I don't think he's lost the talent. It's just he doesn't have people in front of him.
All right, that's a look at Week 6. It ends tonight on 97.3 ESPN. Lions and Packers is the final game of the week. And tomorrow we will do our weekly Who's In, Who's Out, the 12 teams we think will make the NFL playoffs. And after Week 6, we're in an interesting spot. And, of course, KC Joyner will be back on Friday's show to get us ready for Eagles-Cowboys, a battle for first place in the NFC East. All right, Casey, appreciate it as always.
Thank you, man.
And NFL Insider KC Joyner, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline.